So, you guys are our first class on. I just am curious if you have any, or any questions that you would like to ask. Because you guys are going to have to leave before we're finished today. So I'm just curious if you have any questions that you would like to get out first. One?
Then you go.
There are questions.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess my question is about the thylacine hunt. I'm fascinated by that. Like, any progress? Any updates? What's going on?
Sure. So I can't see who's talking right now, but I'm just going to answer this best I can. So hi, everybody. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm Forrest. I'm a wildlife biologist, and I specialize in animals that are critically endangered, so much so that most of the world has considered them extinct. And in doing that, one of the animals, whoever just asked this question, that I have targeted is the thylacine, the Tasmanian tiger. I've been on 2 months totaling about 2 expeditions totaling about 4.5 months of trekking between Tasmania and Northern Australia looking for the thylacine. Thylacine, for those that don't know, is called the marsupial wolf. It's like, imagine a coyote with the stripes of a tiger, but has the features of a possum. It's a very bizarre looking animal. And they were hunted to extinction in Tasmania about 40 years ago. And since then, there have been ongoing reports of this animal popping up. People saying, I think it's still here. I've seen one here. One across the road. And so I've gone and investigated that at length. And it's funny because as a biologist and a scientist, I go through rigorous protocol, to say yes or no, this animal's here. With the thylacine, I haven't had any clues that truly definitively lead me to believe the animal's here, but my instinct says that it is still there. So that's one where instinct and science just kind of have to marry. And my plan is in 2020 to go and spend 2 months in Papua New Guinea looking for the animal there.
Is there any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, I got a question for you. What is the crazy? I've seen a lot of your Instagram, a lot of your photos, a lot of your videos, right? But there's got to be a moment where you're like, oh my goodness, what did I get myself into? Have you ever had one of those?
Oh yeah, let's see, I've been in 2 plane crashes now. I've been bitten by a mammoth snake, stung by a man-of-war jellyfish, mauled by a lion, charged by a hippo. I've had a couple of those run-ins. I'll say this last year, the one that probably made my heart jump into my throat the most was I was working in Southern Africa tranquilizing lions. And in order to shoot a lion with a tranquilizer dart, you have to get about 30 yards away from them because they only get about as far as a paintball gun. And in doing that, the lion that we darted was so big that it actually took 3 doses of serum to put him down. And after I darted him the first time, he popped back up and charged me, and I dropped flat on the ground. Unfortunately, he was so dozy from the tranquilizer serum that he ran right by me. But I think if I had waited another second, I think he probably would have got me. So that one was pretty scary this year, working with the lions.
Wow. This is like every day at the office for you.
Yep. This is everyday work for me.
What is you have a place that you're planning on, where's your next adventure taking you?
In about 3 weeks, I take off for Mozambique and Madagascar for the rest of the year, looking for a lost shark species.
Which lost shark species?
Well, we're actually looking for a number of them, but the one that I'm most hopeful for is the white-tipped weasel shark. It's an animal not seen since 1974, about a 5-foot-long shark that has white and black tips on its fins, and only a few of those specimens have ever been found, and so we're going to go dive in these regions, very, very heavy with tiger sharks, to try and see if we can find our weasel shark.
Wow. I just want to take just a minute because we do have a few other classes that have joined us since then. I think we have Mr. Branshaw's class over at PMS and Ms. Weinhagen's class, I think, is finally on now over at Hart. So welcome, and thank you all for joining us. I'm curious, Ms. Weinhagen's class, do you have any questions for Forrest? I'm going to take that as maybe I see you, but you don't see us yet. How about Mr. Branshaw's class?
Yeah, we see you.
Thank you, Mr. Padway. Actually, thank you for asking a question. I actually have a student with a question. Okay, go ahead. Identify yourself.
My name's Anushka Praveed. We were watching your video where the tiger shark was attempting to destroy the camera. My question is, do you know if the video camera was sending out an electric signal that was picked up by the shark to cause the behavior?
Hi, Anushka. That's a really good question. You know, that area in the Maldives has a lot of animals that are what we call non-habituated, meaning they're tiger sharks that have never seen people before. So these sharks were very curious by nature. They were very hungry and they were very aggressive and very, very fired up. Now, sharks have a specialized organ in their nose called the ampullae of Lorenzini. You guys may have learned about this. If not, it is a gel-filled sacs that go along their nose that have little tiny hairs in them. And those hairs detect the electrical magnetic impulses of their prey, usually fish. They're very, very sensitive to that. Now, a camera, especially the cameras we use, are really, really big. I don't have any behind me in my office. So they're really, really big cameras, and they put out a lot of energy. They have big battery packs, and they're running motors inside of them. They put out a lot of energy. And I think that, without a doubt, that tiger shark that you saw eat our camera in the Maldives, he came in really hungry, he was fired up, he was looking for food, and all of a sudden his ampullae of Lorenzini picked up this pulsing thing that probably put off a signal similar to a big injured fish, and he went right in for it, grabbed it, tore it to shreds. We actually managed to recover the camera. We lost the light that was attached to it, but yeah, I think you're right. I think the electrical impulses that the tiger shark was reading led to his attack on that camera.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wow. Mr. Branshaw, just out of curiosity, does anyone have a follow-up on that or another question while we have you?
I'm not really sure. Does anybody have a question? If you want to raise your hand.
Lila has a question.
I
have one.
All right. I think, Mr. Padway, if you come back to us, I'm sure we could probably come up with one. I'll let the students think about it right now. We appreciate you taking that question. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I believe Amador is just about here, but I do have a different question for you, Forrest, about, you know, we've been friends for a long time, and the first people ever to start Facebook when Facebook was still like brand new. And I've seen your photos, I followed your Instagram. This is a little bit unrelated, but in terms of your career, I'm just curious what role social media has played in like helping you become who you are.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that social media was not the catalyst to the career that I currently have, but it's certainly been a support player for it. And what I mean by that is, in today's day and world, Instagram and Facebook act like a digital resume. And you put, you know, like on any resume, you put your highlights on there. And because I work in media and I work with wildlife, I'm able to put the highlights of those two things that I do on these social platforms. And that has led to ongoing people reading, excited, and everything from other scientists who connect with me and say, hey, I saw you post about this tiger. You know, I know the specific region in India where there's this thing going on with tigers. Don't you want to come work on it? And I'll be like, absolutely, I'll be right there. Or other things like just this morning, I had GQ, which is a magazine, contact me through Instagram and say, hey, we want to run a story with you. Are you available next week? So social media has acted like a digital resume for me, and as my following has grown, more and more people have reached out to ask me questions through it.
Awesome, thank you. I got a question here with William. How did you get into your career?
No, this is
Sorry, it was how did you get into your current career?
Gotcha. Sorry, guys, I'm not seeing who's talking, so it's just I'm doing the best I can here. How did I get into my current career? Well, I grew up in Africa. I've always loved wildlife. I've always wanted to work with wildlife. And when I got done with university, where I got a degree with Mr. Padway in biology, I decided I wanted to pursue wildlife in the field. Now, I spent many years just working on projects that I loved, that really didn't pay very much, that got me all over the world working with animals, and I slowly started to build a name for myself as a high-risk wildlife biologist, meaning the guy that would do things that other biologists perhaps were a little bit nervous to do because they were dangerous, such as being in the water and tagging sharks or milking rattlesnakes, and the list goes on and on. And finally, as this continued to grow, I started reaching out to people and saying, hey, you know, this is pretty interesting. It's far more interesting than some of the other things that are going on in the news and on TV. Would anyone like to develop some kind of a media source around this? And so eventually I created the concept for the show that I host now and pitched it to all of the networks, Animal Planet, Discovery, and National Geographic. And at one point someone said, wow, this is really interesting. We've never seen someone like you that does what you do, that has your qualifications. Let's go for it. And so that's how I got into working in television.
Awesome. Thank you. I see Ms. Weinhagen's class in here, I believe. Do you guys have a question over there at heart?
I don't think we have any questions yet. We're just sitting down. Give us a minute, okay?
Okay, no problem. No problem. You know, one thing about your career, though, Forrest, that I want to just come back to, like, you've grown up doing this, right?
That's right.
And the concept of your show, Extinct or Alive, like looking for these animals that have been written off, I think there's a backstory with your grandfather, is that right?
That's correct. I can talk about that.
Yeah, do you want to just share real quickly so people have an idea?
So I grew up in Zimbabwe, and like I'm sure some of you listening here, my granddad was my role model. He was my hero. He was an amazing man, and long before I was born, he was on an expedition to the Comores in East Africa, and he found this bizarre-looking fish. And he wasn't a scientist like I am. He wasn't a wildlife biologist. He was just a simple small business owner who was interested in this bizarre-looking fish. And he collected this fish from the fish market and took it down to a museum in South Africa and found out that he had just found the first ever whole non-rotten specimen of a coelacanth, an animal that had been believed extinct for 666 million years. And that was a revolutionary discovery at the time. Now, I found that story so fascinating in the way that he told it to me as a young boy that I was always driven to try and do something like that. It's one thing to go and find animals in the world that we already know are there, but to find an animal that the whole world thinks is gone and doesn't exist anymore, like almost like finding a dinosaur like my grandfather did, is to me one of the coolest things that anybody can ever do. So I've been driven and motivated and passionate to work on these high-risk animals, these animals that are so beyond the distinction of critically endangered that they're believed extinct for a very long time. And you know, and once I started to materialize that in around 2013, it all kind of snowballed, and all the research came in, and I was really the only scientist in the world at that time focusing on animals that we now deem lost species that haven't been seen in a long time that may still be out there. And so I've just got more and more into it, more and more focused on it, more and more passionate about it. Even right now, before Mr. Padway called me, I was sitting on my computer doing research about lost lion species to try and see if I could understand more about it, because I might be going into the field to look for that. So it's just something that I'm completely driven to do.
That's awesome. I bet the fact that it's 2019, there's a lot of technology that is helping you with what you're doing, which I think we're going to get into in just a minute. I do want to mention one thing. I think on the top right of your screen, you have an option to like change your view from a grid, and you might be able to see all the thumbnails of everybody.
Okay, yep, that helps. Great.
Perfect. All right, we have a couple other classes that I've seen have joined us. I'm going to open this question up to anybody who wants to unmute themselves and ask. Is there anyone out there with a question?
We have a question.
Mr. Padway,
Sorry.
Mr. Brenshaw from Pleasanton Middle, we have a student that would like to ask if that's possible.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead. Identify yourself.
Hi, my name is Alexander Mikhail, or Alex.
Yes.
And one of my questions was, have you ever found a hybrid? And if you have, which one was the most bizarre?
Have I ever said that again? Ask the question again, please, Alex.
Have you ever found a hybrid?
A hybrid? Yeah, I mean, that's what's interesting about wildlife is there's no set box that you can check for how things work. And so I've found lots of hybrids. You know, obviously if it's a hybridized species, it has to be somewhat closely related. I think one hybrid that none of us even know, most of us probably don't know exists, and we see them all the time, is an animal called a coy wolf. Now, what that is an animal that's part coyote and part wolf. And in our case, here in California, it's part dog. And the reason being, wolves, coyotes, and dogs all evolved from a common ancestor. And the coyotes that we have in California today, almost every single one, if anybody that's listening to this has ever seen a coyote, odds are that it has some wolf DNA in it, and it's actually a hybrid itself called a coy wolf. So something that as simple as looking in our own backyard and seeing a coyote, sometimes we're actually seeing hybrids we don't even realize.
Super.
We have actually a hybrid here. It's a pigeon chicken.
A pigeon chicken?
We have a pigeon chicken.
Oh, yeah?
It's called Bernard.
Anyway,
I just saw
thank you, Alex.
I think that's going to take us into a different question. I think Village High School has a question.
From our class, Scott?
No, from Village. I think Village has a
Okay,
question.
Village. Okay, thank you.
Asking again.
Hi, we're back on.
Hi. We had a few questions, but the first one we wanted to ask was, we watched the video with the crocodiles, and we're just curious, like, what that felt like.
Sorry, can you be a little more specific? I've done a lot of videos with crocodiles.
Oh, it was where you were dressed up like a crocodile, like swimming right up next to one, assuming the position.
Well, look, one thing that I should probably lead by saying here is don't do what I do. It's not safe. And what I mean by that is when you see a video like that on Instagram or Facebook or on the internet or even on TV, you're seeing a highlight reel of something that took a lot of time and a lot of effort and energy to do. So when you see me with swimming with those crocodiles, that's after weeks of working with those animals to understand them and learn about their behavior and understand what I can do to interact safely with them. It's not like I just grabbed my bag and was like, I'm going to jump in with a crocodile and see what happens. You know, that's a good way to lose your life. So I just want to preface this story by saying that. Now, the reason that we went down there and worked with those crocodiles was because 20 years ago, 25 years ago, people thought if you got in the water with a shark, you were going to die, right? That was the end. Like, you can't be in the water with a shark. Now, today, the leading dive ecotourism in the world is based around diving with sharks. If you go on Instagram, you go on Facebook, you go on YouTube, you're going to see people swimming with sharks, and it's really cool and it's really popular. And I had the theory that if I can prove to the world the same thing can happen with crocodiles, then it can change our understanding of these mindless killing beasts and make us realize that these are complex, intelligent animals. They still deserve to be respected, they still deserve to be feared in their own right, but swimming with them and allowing me to interact with them, putting myself in that situation to show the world that these aren't just mindless killing machines, was worthwhile. That being said, when I jumped in the water and I'm swimming there for the first time face to face with a crocodile, I was pretty much ready to poop my pants. It was terrifying.
We have one more question.
I was just wondering if you think you could do it without all those weeks of experience with the crocodiles or animals in general.
Sorry, if I could swim with them without the tool?
Yeah. Yeah.
In some cases, yes. What you don't see, and I'm not sure which video you guys watched, is when I got done working with the crocodiles in my special suit where we were practicing biomimicry to try and look and act like the crocodiles. I actually took that all off and was swimming around in Speedo to try and see if the animals were going to change their behavior when I didn't have the wetsuit on. And I'm still here, all my fingers and toes. So I think that we got to a point where the animals and myself respected each other enough and we gave each other enough space that we could interact peacefully, regardless of the technology.
Wow. I think we have someone in Amador with the question. Is that right?
Hi.
Hello.
My name is Olivia, and I was just wondering if you could tell us about like the most like serious situation you've been in, and then also my teacher Mr. Turner was wondering if you bring like anti-venom with you.
Sorry, Olivia, I actually didn't hear most of that question. I heard you introduce yourself, and then it cut out. Could you repeat that?
Yeah. I was just wondering if you could describe like maybe like the scariest situation you and like dealt with that and.
Sorry, I think the question was what's the scariest situation you've been in, and if you're bringing some type of anti-venom or something along with you.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, I've been in a lot of scary situations. 2 years ago, I had a taipan, which is one of the most venomous snakes in the world, slither over my neck when I was under a house trying to grab it out, and I just froze because I knew if it had bitten me, that was the end. And we never carry anti-venom, and the reason is, for those that don't know, anti-venom is not like something you throw in your backpack. It takes vials, for someone my size, about 15 vials this big, and they only last about a week from when they're made to when they expire. So when we go on 3-month-long expeditions, having a vial that only lasts a week doesn't do you much good. So we never take anti-venom. The taipan was a close one. But I'll tell you something interesting. The scariest situations that I'm ever in, that I ever have, are 100% people-based. They're not wildlife-based. Yes, I've been bitten by sharks, stung by stingrays, all that fun stuff. But that's me putting myself in harm's way. When I was in the Amazon this year, we had to charter a DC-3, which is a big World War II cargo plane, and land on Pablo Escobar's private airstrip in the middle of the Colombian jungle, where they used to grow a bunch of drugs, cocaine, and move from there up into the jungle to look for this extinct species of crocodile. And there we weren't captured, but we were held by FARC rebels who had never seen Westerners in this part of the world before, and they thought we were coming in to shut down their operation, or we were from the FBI, or we were going to steal their drugs, or I don't know what they thought. But there was a language barrier, there was a problem, having guns put in my face because I'm trying to go somewhere to work with wildlife, that's way scarier than just having, being in the water with a shark or being in the water with a crocodile. Those animals are predictable. You always know if you're facing off with a shark or a crocodile exactly what it's thinking. You never know what people are thinking, and that's way scarier than animals.
That's fascinating. You mentioned, I've heard before, something, what is like the one animal or thing that is the most dangerous in your mind?
The most dangerous animal in the world to me or not to me, period, is a mosquito. And we don't all think about it because, we're thinking lions and tigers and bears, oh my. But the mosquito, that little thing that carries malaria and all kinds of other diseases, that's the animal that's the most likely to kill you. Now, if you want to take those out of the equation and talk about the scary ones, the hippopotamus is hands down the most unpredictable, difficult, scary animal. Two times now, I've almost lost my life to hippos. And the problem with them is no matter how much you think you know about a hippopotamus, you don't. You don't know how they're going to behave. You don't know how they're going to react. And they're really, really tough to work with.
And I guess this will be a nice segue into a PSA about hippo safety. But if anyone is being charged by a hippo, what would your recommendation be?
Well, you're not going to outrun them in a straight line, but you will outmaneuver them. So you want to zigzag and go up a tree if you can. And if I didn't take my own advice, I'd be here today.
You've been charged by a hippo.
Yeah, one time I got hit by a hippo on the Zambezi River in a canoe, and it chopped my canoe in half. And then the other time, in the same general region, I was walking through the bush, and I startled this hippo that was in a shallow pool, and he came up and charged right at me. And I did a couple, as Mr. Padway may remember from our rugby days, a couple steps left and right, and managed to dodge him until he kept running by me. So yeah, had a couple run-ins with hippos.
Awesome. I have a couple other things, but does anyone here have a question for? What's the most rewarding part of your job?
That's a great question. This is the most rewarding part of my job. Having people that are inspired to care about wildlife and care about conservation and care about the next generation enjoying the planet, that's the most rewarding part of my job. I love being in the field. I love, finding the animals that I found and having the incredible interactions on a personal level. I mean, those things fuel me and fuel what I do. But they don't compare to the amount of impact and influence I have. The shows that we make on Animal Planet Discovery reach around 30 million people worldwide. And I get somewhere in the ballpark of probably 100 to 300 messages a day from students just like you guys going, oh my God, you know, I love your show. I want to do this when I grow up. I want to work on this species or that problem, and I want to solve it. And to have people reach out to me and tell me that they've seen, you know, what we're working on, and that it's changed their entire career trajectory, and that they want to try save the planet the same way we are, that's by far the most rewarding part of my job.
Do you have any advice if anybody wants to get into the animal sciences?
Yeah, if you want to get into the animal sciences, you've got to be tenacious. It's a very competitive field, and you know, you got to go to a good university. You got to study what your passion is, and then you really have to be willing to put in tough hours. A lot of long hours of hiking and doing field surveys. The last big biology contract that I took before I started working in television was counting ants, and that's not a joke. I counted nearly 2 million ants, invasive Argentine ants on the California Channel Islands. If you think that's fun, it's not. It's really, really, really boring. But I knew I was doing something good. I was working in wildlife, and it was my career overall was heading in that direction of doing much bigger, more impactful things. Yeah, you know, just think of that if you're ever like, man, why am I in this darn zoology course? Why am I out here picking weeds that are invasive or any of those other kind of sciences where you're like, this has nothing to do with my passion? You got to put in those hard hours to get to a place in field biology that you can really focus on the things you want to do.
We're not starting with sharks, we're starting with ants.
I was.
Hey, I got a text message from one of the other classes who's having trouble asking their question, but we were hoping that you could share a little bit about, you know, it's 2019 right now. We've got a lot of new technologies out there. In the past, right, people are fearful of sharks, and the solution has been, well, we'll go kill the sharks. And so is there some stuff out there now that can just help us exist with these things that people would other be, well, you know, afraid of? Here, oh, there's a mountain lion in town, everybody, you know, hide your cats and dogs. Like, what exists today that maybe didn't exist 10 or 15 years ago?
Absolutely. You know, human-predator conflict mitigation, meaning stopping animals and people from having bad interactions, is more pertinent. It's more important now than ever. And the reason being, there's more people now, and we're encroaching on the wildlife's habitat. You know, we build houses further and further out, nearer and nearer to mountain lion habitat, where more and more people are swimming in the ocean every year. In fact, as soon as I hang up this call, I'm going to Great White Shark Survey down the road from here. And the reason I tell you that is we are having more and more run-ins with predators. And the only way the traditional way of resolving that is lethal, meaning a bullet in the head takes care of your problem. But we don't live in a day and age where that's sustainable. If we shoot every shark and mountain lion and bear and everything else that we see that in front of us, then we're not going to have any of those creatures left. So this is a very long-winded way of me getting to the point that human-predator conflict mitigation does not need to be lethal. There's great technology. There are animatronic decoys. There are electric fences. There are sound alarms. There are smell alarms. There are all kinds of really cool pieces of tech that you can use to keep animals from coming into human habitat, which ultimately keeps both the people and the wildlife safer.
What do you think is the most valuable piece in your field to help you do what you do?
The most valuable piece, anybody that works in the scientific field, especially with wildlife, is knowledge. If you can understand the animal that you're working on, whether that's to study it, to keep it away from people, to capture it, relocate it, to breed it, reproduce it, is understanding the animal's ecology. So if I'm working on sharks, right, and I know that there's one beach somewhere down here where sharks eat people, right, I need to understand why the sharks are doing that. Is it near to a seal rookery? Do sharks have specialized sensory organs that we can tap into? Is there bad visibility? You know, is it something to do with eyesight? And then you start marrying all of these things together and go, okay, look, this is near to a seal rookery. Maybe people shouldn't be swimming there. You know, sharks are most actively feeding at dawn and dusk, so maybe we close the beaches between after the hours of 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. You know, sharks have these specialized electrical receptors called their ampullae Lorenzini. Maybe we target those using electrical nets, basically, that puts out an impulse that the sharks don't like. And we go down this checklist of things, knowing about the animal's ecology, that allow us to adapt to that particular species and work on it. And so knowledge is hands down the most important thing. Once you have the knowledge and the understanding of the animal, you can find the tools that will fit to do what you need to do.
Interesting. So starting with a really low-tech solution of just understanding
Absolutely.
the animals. Are there anything specific out? I mean, you've been talking a lot about sharks. Is there anything specific out there? Like if I was going to Google something right now that I could find. I mean, you're talking about electromagnetic nets and things. I'm just curious. Like, are there specific brands or things or?
Yeah, and you guys can write this down if you like. There's a great company called that makes a product called the Shark Shield, and it does exactly what I said. It emits an electrical impulse that helps deter sharks. And if you wear a shark shield on your leg, sharks will not come and bite you because you're putting off an awful electrical pulse that sharks don't want to be involved in. There's many other pieces of tech. There's a shark shield right there, yeah. And you see how that works? The swimmer's got it on its leg, and it's putting off this circular electrical field, and sharks do not want to penetrate that to come and eat you. That's one of there's something called a clever buoy that detects sharks. There's the HEX technology, which I worked on and helped develop, which holds your body's naturally occurring electrical energy signal in capacity. There's all these different tools that you have to use that you can use to help mitigate problems.
So sorry, you mentioned HEX, and that's the suit that you're wearing in this photo. Is that right?
That's correct.
So what is it why is that different than a regular wetsuit?
So in that HEX wetsuit, the one you see me in that picture with there, is the same thing that's in the door of your microwave oven. If you were to run your microwave and put your head in it, your head would explode. You'd cook your brains. It's no good. So what's in that wetsuit is the exact thing. It's that finely woven conductive carbon yarn. And what that does is your body, as your muscles tense and your heart beats, your body naturally emits an electrical energy signal. This is a known thing. If you run your hand over a tri-field meter, the meter goes crazy. It's picking up your energy. Now, when the HEX suit, having this conductive carbon yarn covering your whole body, it keeps that energy from leaching out. And when you touch something, it acts as a ground, and all the energy goes out through the ground. So if I'm a swimmer and I'm swimming along in dirty water, and there's a shark there, he's going to pick up on that electrical signal, and especially if you're splashing and the visibility's bad, he's going to go, oh, that might be an injured seal. That's a good deal. But if I'm wearing the HEX suit, where there's no energy leaving my body, and I'm splashing around on the surface, and the visibility is low, then the shark might look up or feel that energy or hear the splashing that's above him and go, oh, that's probably just a log or a piece of kelp floating in the ocean. I'll keep swimming. So that's a very rudimentary way to think of what the HEX technology does. It keeps the energy in the same way a microwave keeps the energy in, so that you're safer to animals that use electrical energy as a method to hunt.
And do all animals respond to that the same way? Or are there certain animals that works with and others that it doesn't?
Absolutely not. All animals do not respond to that the same way. And this goes back to my previous point of understanding the animals. Now, the HEX technology was developed for birds, for bees, and for sharks. We have coincidentally found that the technology is very applicable to other animals. And like this photo that you're looking at right now with me and the alligator, I had no idea that alligators, and by the way, science has no idea whether or not alligators can pick up electrical energy signals. We know sharks can because of their ampullated large teeth. But here you see this alligator almost smiling with my hand under its chin, and it wasn't being aggressive, it wasn't being flighty, it wasn't being scared. I think I have the feeling that there's something that we don't know about alligators that enables them to detect electrical energy signals.
That's really fascinating. And so is that the same way? I mean, we're both divers. I used to dive for lobsters, right? And at night, if you use red lights instead of white lights, they respond differently. So that's kind of the same concept?
Similar technology tapping into a different organ of the animal. Just like you said, you flip to a red light, the lobster can't see it. This is a technology where you put on your Harry Potter cloak and you're electrically invisible.
Wow. I got a related question from one of the other classes, a little bit different. And I think you kind of alluded to this. We talk about like climate change and how species are ending up in different places. But specifically to deforestation, have you seen a lot of effects on wildlife from these areas? I mean, you've been very remote parts of the Amazon, parts of the world. Do you see a lot of effects of like deforestation on wildlife?
This is such an important question, and it saddens me to talk about it every time. In the last 30 or 40 years, these stats, you'd have to look these up, we've lost 80% of the biomass of animals in the world. 80% reduction in the wildlife on the planet in the last 30 or 40 years. Now, if you think about that, that's a lot. That if you look around your class, that means 8 out of 10 of you would not be sitting in your classroom. Now, if you think about that in the places I go to these amazing pockets of world where it's like a glimpse into what it used to be like. But on a whole, having an 80% reduction in wildlife populations is terrible, and I've seen it everywhere I've been. I've returned to places 1, 2, 10 years later that I've worked in the field before, and they're unrecognizable. The biomass is gone, and that's leading to problems like in Asia where we have now empty forest syndrome. If you walk around a jungle in Thailand or Vietnam or China, you don't even hear crickets. You hear nothing. It's just trees and silence, and the reason being that everything has been hunted and poached and pushed out, and so the whole ecosystem has collapsed. And although the forest still looks pretty and it's really beautiful and it's really serene, it's an empty forest, and that's really unhealthy for the planet. So I've seen a lot of it, and it's a big problem.
I think we have a question out there from Hart Middle School again. I'm going to go back to them. Art, you guys there? You may still be on mute. I see you there. I don't hear you. You guys sure you're not muted? You don't look muted. I tell you what, Mr. Jones's class, I think you guys are on. You have a question? I'll see if I can get the question from Hart. We'll come back. Or anyone in here. Yeah.
Do I just talk?
Yeah, go ahead. Just talk.
Okay. So like, is there like a favorite place that you've been brought through your work that you like, were like, oh, this place I didn't really know it was going to be like this, or something like, I don't know, like a certain habitat or something that you've been brought into that you were like, oh, like this is just like a favorite, like, I don't know, like, do you prefer like working in the ocean, or like where you prefer to work and study animals?
I'm pretty diverse. I like tropical jungle and ocean. Those are my two favorite habitats to work in. But I think your first question was kind of like, have you been taken somewhere that surprised you? And I've been to Indonesia probably 9 times now for work. And 2 years ago, I went to the Indonesian island of Java, which is one of the most densely populated islands in the world. And I was expecting it to be like a lot of other places in that part of the world I've been, where it was completely void of life. It had just been hunted out and poached. And when I got to this remote region in Java, Indonesia, it absolutely blew my mind. It was almost something kind of like Africa, where there was just tons of big game everywhere, wildlife everywhere. And it was nice to know that even in such a densely populated island like Java, Indonesia, there were still these pockets of habitat that still had such great biodiversity. So that was really, really good.
Thank you.
Awesome. I got that question from Hart. If they want to try it one more time, otherwise I'll go ahead and ask it for them. But it has to deal with the technology you're talking about, specifically the shark shield. And their question is, how do you know what the frequency of an animal is to make like a sound shield?
Yeah, that's a good question. So obviously, as I said with sharks, and referring to the shark shield, in those gel-filled sacs, those amphibial Lawrencei that run along the snout, you have tiny little hairs, and those hairs pick up a vibration, and that says, hey, that's the fish. So the way the shark shield works is it puts off such a strong pulse of energy that we can't detect, because we as human beings don't pick up electrical energy impulses. But that little hair in the shark's amphibial Lawrencei, instead of going wiggle, 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 it's a fish, it's a piece of meat, it goes boom, back and forth like that. And it drives the sharks crazy. It's like if you were to walk into a room with a super loud, obnoxious whistle or something like that, and you're like, I can't stand this. I gotta get out of here. It's the same thing for the sharks. It's not like it's gonna hurt the animal. It's just like, I hate this, I'm leaving. And that's what happens. So How they actually detect what that frequency range is on the shark shield, I couldn't tell you. I wasn't involved in that technology. But what I would imagine is they went through a series of tests of increasing the magnitude at which the wavelengths were projected. And when they got to a certain point where they were super strong and putting out a ton of energy, the sharks would just turn away and leave and say, I don't like that. And that's probably around where the shark shield decided to manufacture the technology that emits that wavelength.
Thank you. Mr. Jones's class, I see that you guys have been unmuted. I think you might have a question over there.
I'll start with one. I want to know what's happened with the Tasmanian tiger thing.
All right, Mr. Jones. Well, we touched on this earlier, but I'll just recap.
Sorry.
No problem. Yeah, I've spent probably a collective 3.5 to 4 months looking for the thylacine in the field, meaning boots on the ground, living out of a backpack. And this is one of those weird ones where, even though the thylacine is so iconic and everybody thinks the Tasmanian tiger is still there, and I put so many hours into looking for them, and hundreds and hundreds of trail cameras and tons of baited sites and tons of aerial surveys and all the things that we've done, tons of helicopter work, even though I've never personally seen it, and all the biological signs are pointing towards it's not there. This is one where instinct for me, or maybe passion, or maybe just confounded stupidity, taken the science, because I'm convinced that the animal is still there. So much so that in 2020, I'll be spending 2 to 3 months in Papua New Guinea for my third attempt at locating one.
Go ahead.
Joe, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, I think there's a question at Amador real quickly. I know they're going to get off in the next 5 minutes. So, Amador, you want to go ahead and ask?
Yeah. Do you know any places in California that are really good for seeing wildlife?
Yeah, we have a few nice pockets in California. The Carrizo Plains are really nice. You know, if you go up into coastal northern California, that's probably the best for seeing the most diversity. If you go all the way up by the Oregon border, like Humboldt County, you can see bears, you can see Thule elk, you can, if you get really lucky, see a wolf. There's lots of bobcats, lots of foxes. That's probably the best region to see a lot of wildlife, big wildlife. But what's great about where we live, all of us here in California, is every wildlife. It might not all be big, but if you guys walk right outside in your school, you go flip over some logs, you'll find some slender salamanders, some pill bugs. You know, it's not always about the big things with teeth and claws. Sometimes it's just learning about the little stuff that you have in your own backyard that's just as fascinating. So that's kind of a long-winded way to answer your question, but what's fun is there's lots of wildlife in California. A little bit of research about what you want to find will help tell you where to go, but don't discredit the stuff you have in your own backyard.
All right, we're going to try Hart one more time. I think they have a question for you, and if not, I'll ask it. But go ahead, Hart. I'll go ahead and ask it for you. I just popped this picture up, and somebody was asking, have you found any animals that you have thought to be extinct?
Well, you've got a good picture up there. The picture that Mr. Padway just put up is my biggest discovery of 2019. People are calling it the biggest discovery in the last 100 years for biology. In 1908, a single Fernandina island tortoise was found by the California Academy of Sciences. The only specimen that has literally ever been found. Everybody said that the animal was extinct in 1908, 114 years ago. This year, after 6 grueling days in 122-degree heat on the second most active volcano in the world, in the picture you're looking at, I found the second ever Fernandina Island giant tortoise. Now, this tortoise is now the new poster child of conservation. It was she, Fern, and myself, but I'm more interested in her. We're on the cover of Time magazine, the cover of Forbes magazine, the cover of the New York Press, the Daily Mail, and the list goes on and on and on. She is the rarest animal in the world, because there's literally one of them, and that's her in my hands. We found her this year.
What happens to her now?
Fern was safely, when I found her, she was very underweight, she was malnourished. You can't really see it in that picture, but you can kind of see how bony her foot is a little bit. She was very underweight and malnourished, so we took Fern from this isolated little pocket of vegetation that she was living in, and transported her to the Fausto Lorena tortoise breeding facility on Santa Cruz in the Galapagos. Since we moved her there, when we first got her there, she spent 6 days in her water dish. She was so dehydrated and so happy to see water that she literally wouldn't get out of her water dish for 6 days. Since then, she's put on 7 pounds in weight. We've raised $4 million to return to Fernandina in December to find a male suitor for her to hopefully bring the species back from the end of the season.
Wow. And did you get the name Fern?
Where did we get the name?
Was that your? Did you get the name Fern?
I named her Fern because she's the Fernandina Island tortoise. It's a female, a very beautiful female, and we thought Fern was a suiting name.
Excellent. And here's just one more follow-up from Mark, because I think they're about to leave us too. But it goes back to what you were talking about, like deforestation. Is there any way to recover these ecosystems that are, 80% gone?
Absolutely. Wildlife and our planet is super resilient. One of the reasons I do what I do is because it shows the resilience of these creatures. The fact that people haven't seen them like that tortoise in 114 years and just have written them off as extinct, and then we go out there and we show that there's some out there, it shows the resilience. So all it takes for these habitats to bounce back is for them to be left alone, for them to be managed a little bit. Pull out, get the invasive species out, stop cutting down the trees, stop hunting the animals. And it'll go through a flux. First there'll be too many prey, and then there'll be too many predators, but eventually the habitat will reach a state of equilibrium and restoration will be complete. These habitats that are completely destroyed will actually return to a state in which they are very much so functioning, so long as all the keystone species are still there. So there's always hope. There's never reason to give up hope on a habitat or an animal. You just have to let it be and not be prosecuting it for a short amount of time, and you see recovery.
Awesome, thank you. I want to go back to Mr. Jones's class. I think there might have been another question over there.
Oh, where'd you go? Here. Ask a question.
Mr. Galante, how many times have you gotten malaria?
I have never gotten malaria.
Yeah, of course, just to follow up on that, something that I thought was interesting that I've heard you say before is you don't actually take malaria medication, is that right?
Correct. I take as few drugs and pills and things as I can for these expeditions. If I followed the checklist of things shots and pills that I had to take to go to every location that I go to, my entire meals would be boxed with pills. So I don't take anything, and I don't get shots. I'm very cautious when I'm there. I do things about not drinking bad water, doing silly things like drinking a gin and tonic before bed, and I've been sick a lot, don't get me wrong, but overall I'm very healthy and I've never had any major ailments.
Here's a question from Mr. Johnson's room. Is it okay to use invasive species to counteract other non-native species that are ruining ecosystems?
Well, your terminology is wrong there, because an invasive species by definition is an animal that is creating a problem. It's not just an animal that's not native. So, but I get what your question is. Is it okay to bring in an animal from an outside environment to combat an existing animal? And the answer is a resounding no, and yet we continue to make this mistake. And if you'd like a good example of this, take the Hawaiian Islands, for instance. I forget what the original prosecutor was, but in the Hawaiian Islands, there was an issue with, I think, rodents. So what did? We brought in monkeys to try and combat the rodents. And then as soon as we did that, we realized the monkeys were out of control and they were eating all the birds. And that's led to 7 or 8 different species of bird extinction in the Hawaiian Islands. And now there's just as many monkeys as there are rats, and nothing's been resolved. So what's the next shot? Do we bring in something that eats monkeys? No, because that's going to create another problem. So you're better to try and target and manage the initial problem without bringing in another non-native species.
I also have one more, I think, from Hart over here. Have you ever wondered about all the animals in the ocean that we have not discovered? And I want to follow up real quickly before you answer this. You're such an underwater being sometimes. Do you prefer searching for things on land or in the water?
Yeah, I'm pretty 50-50. I mean, I love being in the water. Like I said, I literally at 1:30, I was starting a great white shark survey down the road here. So I love being in the water. I'm in the water all the time. That being said, there are a lot of species that we don't know about in the ocean. leaving in 3 weeks, I will head to East Africa for the rest of the year. And there I'm looking for a lost shark species, but I'm also with Dave Ebert, who's the president of the Alaskan Brag Society, the shark club, if you will, for North America. And our goal is, one, for me to find this lost shark, but for him to also identify as many as 5 new species that we're looking for. So, yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff out there. And if you think that the whole world has been figured out or discovered, especially in a wildlife standpoint, it's not even close.
Awesome. I want to open it up to this room because I'm asking a lot of questions. Anyone have a question in here?
To go back to whole invasive species, what do you think would be the best way to deal with species that aren't like maybe invasive but are still really damaging to the environment, like white-tailed deer in California?
Yeah, and that comes down to management, right? The only reason that deer are a problem in California is because there's not enough predators. If there were hundreds of mountain lions running around everywhere, well, that would be a problem for people, right? So it's understanding the ecology of the animals, understanding what the environment's carrying capacity is, and what that means is understanding, you know, if there's 10 acres here, how many deer can live there before the deer are destroying it? And then you have to manage it. So in places like California, where our wild areas are not very, very expansive, and we have harmful animals that aren't being biocontrolled by other native animals, we then have to manage it. And what that might mean is culling deer, it might mean relocating them, it might mean opening up more wild spaces for them. But that's a question of management. Unfortunately, in the United States, we're all very lucky because we have very good wildlife management. Most of the world has very, very poor wildlife management. That's led to a lot of collapse problems.
Fascinating. I want to give Mr. Jones' class another opportunity to see them in the background.
I'm going to preempt their options because they have an exam tomorrow that includes kind of managing biodiversity, and they just finished a project where they had to come up with a hypothetical wildlife management plan. Can you tell us a little bit about the logistics of your great white shark survey so that they can understand what's involved in both gathering, I guess, and I don't know, presenting valid data?
Sure. First of all, love the Todd Cleaver USA Eagles poster behind you there. Secondly, so the project that I'm working on this afternoon is part of a 6-year ongoing study. This is year 4, I believe. And we have a single region here in Santa Barbara where juvenile great white sharks have been gathering every single year in the month of October. Now, I got a report yesterday that there's 6 animals, basically my animals, if you will, that I've been working on in one region of the beach. So because this is such a long-term study, and we started this 6 years ago, we're going to go down there, we're going to look for the animals, we're going to look at their size, we're going to understand where they've been, we're going to try and get some of the tag data, we're going to see how much they've grown from the last time we saw them, which some of them will be 1 year ago, some of them might be 2 years ago, some of them might be only 4 years ago, and we compile all of this data. And what compiling all of this data does is it helps us understand where are these sharks going, why are they here now when they haven't been here before, how quickly are they growing, and I think most importantly in this survey, are they a threat to humans? Because where we are, where these sharks are, is a very, very heavily populated beach where people swim every single day. So the logistics are big, there's a lot of pieces that go into it, the data is extensive, and we have to compile all of that over the course of 6 years to come up with some answers for the state of California.
So is it for the state? Is it funded by the state?
This project is partially funded by the state, partially funded by a private organization.
Great.
One more engineering question. We talk a lot about California desal plants specifically. Are there effects of the marine life by like extracting? Sorry, I gotta read this because I can't phrase it correctly here. But do we put like the extracted salt back in the ocean? Does that contribute to killing or altering these ocean ecosystems?
Well, I'm not an expert in desalination. But what I will say is anytime you take too much of anything out of an environment, you're going to change it. Do I think that if we spent, a week with one plant doing desalination, would it have any impact? No. But if all of a sudden every city up and down California has a giant desalination plant and we're getting all of our water from that and we're discarding all the salt, whether it's on land or in the sea, you're going to change the ecology of that environment and that's going to lead to problems. So it's all about, doing things in micro increments. If we all of a sudden decide to shift and all say we're just going to do decel and take water out of the ocean, that's definitely going to create a problem.
Well, thank you. And this one's from Mr. Johnson, only because I know you had done a travel drug site a long time ago. But what is the weirdest thing that you've eaten?
Oh boy, I've eaten some pretty gross stuff. Probably the worst one that I've eaten was I was in Palau in Micronesia, and again, I don't like to eat rare animals or anything like this, obviously, but I was trying to gain access to these kind of tribal lands in Palau, and the village elder offered me a flying fox, which if you don't know what a flying fox is, it's a bat that's about 3 feet tall, covered in fur. And he grabbed this fox out of a tree, literally threw it on the fire for like 15 seconds, guts and everything. And then he offered it to me to eat. And I had to chew through this furry bat to get into some of the meat and like act like I was very happy and impressed, you know, that he had generously gotten me this flying fox to eat so that I could gain access to his lands to work on our survey there. And it was totally worth it, but it was totally disgusting.
That goes back to your bigger challenges. It's not the wildlife, it's the people that get in the way. I know we're running out of time here. I want to throw it out to anybody who's on, if anyone has one last question before we leave.
Village has one.
Go for it, Village.
Go ahead.
What are the are there any upcoming extinction projects?
Lots. I can't talk about too much, but on October 23rd on Animal Planet, I have 10 new episodes of Extinct or Alive. The first one is Finding Fern, that tortoise that we discussed. There are 4 other groundbreaking discoveries that we haven't announced yet. And the reason that we announced Fern is because we did bring her to that center, so the word got out. But 10 weeks straight, every Wednesday night on Animal Planet starting October 23rd. Those are all, each expedition is over a month long in surveying for extinct animals. And we have some very, very big findings here.
And while you're talking about your show, sorry, I saw a few other things, because it's not just shows that you're starring, you're also starting to produce shows, right?
That's correct.
Are there a few other things that are out there that people are interested in getting in?
Yeah, I make quite a lot of shows now. If you have Netflix, I can't announce it yet, but I have a show coming out on Netflix at the end of this year. I have a show on Shark Week every year at the time being. And then I make shows for the History Channel. There's one that's really fun called Face the Beast, where people go in and they investigate why these animal mass murders happened in Ramree Island off the coast of Myanmar. 1,000 Japanese soldiers got eaten by crocodiles in one night. We went to figure out why that happened, because that's really bizarre. That's just one of a number of episodes. So yeah, we make a lot of TV, and everything I do is to do with wildlife and adventure.
Well, I want to thank you very much for taking some time. I know you've got some great whites that are waiting for you.
Right.
Are you getting in with them right now?
Yeah, I'm going to go sit up in my hex suit and head down there in a minute.
Well, it sounds like your next hour will be much more exciting than probably any of ours. But thank you guys. Thank you, Forrest, very much for doing this. Really appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
Thank you, everyone. It was nice to meet you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's not our bell, is it?
That is our bell.
That it is?